Okay, we're starting, and we're going live on stream. Welcome everyone to this discussion of metaphors and language, literature and mother tongue. Thank you all for coming, and most of all, thank you for coming. It's really, really, really nice to be in Bergen. It's really, really nice to be at the Bergen International Literary Festival again. And it's really nice to see actual physical people talking to you in the audience, and also you at home, of course, or in your office or online. And it's really nice to talk to you, be able to actually see you. My name is Hege Newth. I work in PEN Norway, which is the Norwegian division of PEN International, the world's largest organization for writers and freedom of expression. Our main aim is to promote freedom of expression and to protect journalists, writers and artists that has been persecuted, harassed or imprisoned because they have used their fundamental right to freedom of expression. And we do that, amongst others, by a very good cooperation with ICON, the International City of Refuge Network, which I believe now include more than 70 ICON cities all around the world. In Norway we call it friby, and it's 21 fribyar in Norway, amongst them Bergen. So we are all the more happy to be here in Bergen. And I also have to mention that PEN Norway is 100 years this year, so we will do even more of that work. So all that said, I'm going to introduce I have the great honor of introducing three wonderful poets. I'll start with you, Selma. Selma Yunus, you come from Iraq. You have published 3 poetry collections and 2 prose books in Arabic, and your work has been translated into several languages like Italian, French, English, and Norwegian, Swedish, probably much more. And you have also a collection of poetry in a book that I'm actually very, very proud of. It's called Å kysse en ørken og kysse en myr, which was published on Aschehoug Forlag in 2019 in very, very close cooperation with PEN Norway. It's an anthology of texts by persecuted writers living in Norway. And most importantly, last year, this came out, and it has this wonderful title, Vuggesang for liten kriger. That would be, in English?
A lullaby for
small
a little warrior.
Oh, yeah, okay. It's very nice. And one thing is that it's really a very nice-looking book, but it's bilingual, so it's both in Arabic and in Norwegian, and it's so smart because the Arabic poetry is on the right side, and the Norwegian is on the left side, because we read from left to right and you read from right to left, so it's really a very nice way of doing it.
Yeah, we are right all the time.
Yeah, you are right all the time. That's what the English say when they drive their cars on the wrong side of the road too.
We can use that joke also.
So we're already into languages. And then, actually, I will start with Fatemeh, ladies first, if you don't mind, Weli. Fatemeh Ekhtesari, you are also a very prominent poet. You're from Iran. You have published 4 poetry collections, 2 short story collections, and a novel in Persian. And then another book that I really didn't get what was.
Polygeneric, about the prison time, you mean that?
No. Oh, okay. No.
No.
But if it was that, yes,
Yeah.
then it's really relevant.
Yeah.
And also your books and texts have been translated into very many languages.
Yeah.
The same, English, Norwegian, and Czech, actually, yeah. And I also have to mention that you are very, very active on social media. You have a very, very active Instagram account. profile with 128,000 followers, which is
kind of.
more than the rest of us together, I think, in this room. And I was asking you today because I was really impressed by this, and I said I thought that most of the followers would be women, because you are very active. I mean, you really fight for women's rights, and you told me that no, almost 70% are men, and they're between at the age of 25 and 35. So I don't know the relevance to that here, but it was just a
I don't
sort of
either know.
And you came to Norway in 2017, and you
Yes.
live in Lillehammer.
Yes, small little.
You also contributed to Å kysse en ørken, Å kysse en myr, with a selection of poetry.
Yes.
I didn't bring the book, but go to the library or buy it in the bookstore. And your first poetry book in Norwegian is this,
Yes.
Vi overlever ikke.
Yeah, my
That's-
first child is in Norway.
Yes, your first child. Yeah, your first baby, literary baby in Norwegian. But it's also bilingual.
Yes.
So it's also a very, very... it's a very good-looking book. It's a really nice book.
I
And
know
it's
what happened in your
Persian
mind.
and Norwegian. And I can't hear what you're talking to the audience about, but probably about the book. And you are currently writing on a new.
Yes.
So we're eagerly awaiting for that to publish this year,
Yeah.
hopefully. Yeah. And then Abduweli Ayup. Now, as you are the only man, you had to come last. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
But you are also a very prominent poet, and you're also a linguist from the Xinjiang province in China. And I think that you probably most of all your life, you have been fighting for your minorities' rights, the Uyghur rights, and the use of the language, just to be able to learn it, to read it, and to speak it freely. That has been really, I think, your main fight. So the mother tongue, and this is so special in this context, I think, that the mother tongue is banned.
Yeah.
And you were imprisoned for it for several years, which you have described, and it's really bad to read what you experienced. But you established Uyghur schools, and also you had kindergartens that you established for giving the children the opportunity to learn their own language, their mother tongue. And I just read that you have done the same in Bergen.
Yeah.
That's really, really good. And I also know that your poetry and your texts, they are widespread and widely read by Uyghurs all over the world. So we're talking millions. And I would really like to hear more about that afterwards. And you live here in Bergen.
Yeah.
So there's Selma, Fatemeh Ekhtesari. As I have told everyone now, you represent 3 different cultures and 3 different languages. Your backgrounds and stories are unique, but you have all been persecuted. And you have all paid a very, very high personal price for using your freedom of expression, for using your language, your words, your poetry, and text in your mother tongues. So my first question is to you, Selma. How can language be so powerful and a threat?
For me, language traumatized me from my early years. Since I remember, I was traumatized by language. So it became, after all, my thing. I was born to a minority ethnic group in Iraq, and majority speaks Arabic. I already have parents. They speak totally different accent from the same group of language, and I was struggling with that to understand them, why they are different. And then when I went out, I saw people, they are speaking totally different language that I never heard of it at my home. I start learning Arabic at school, which made very difficult first years for me. And then when I was bullied, of course, it's not just me, but it was life was like that in that time. Because I didn't have the language to answer, and I know everything. I was a smart kid, but I know the answer, but I can't reply. So once I remember, and I still remember, and I hope she is alive, my first teacher in first grade, she asked me about something, and I knew the answer, but I couldn't. I answered her in my language, and she slapped me. And that slapping lived with me, and forever, until now, actually. And I think she was the reason for me to be very obsessed with language. And I challenged myself, I will be the better one. I will be the best of them. And I was the best of them until high school ended. And still I couldn't talk the proper Arabic in daily life, but I was best student in Arabic, formal Arabic at school, highest degree. This obsession actually taught me how language can change people, and how language can put a destiny for you that you never imagined. That you never imagined. You will think about it, or you will plan for it. Becoming a writer, because I identify myself as an Arabic writer because I write in Arabic, because I believe literature has the identity of literature is language. I don't go out and I say I am from this ethnic and I write in Arabic. No, as a writer, I am Arabic writer. The language defines me. And since the language, you ask why it's powerful and is a threat, because through language, actually, you can grow your imagination. And you don't, and I didn't imagine myself, or I didn't think of myself one day I will go with my imagination until the end of what I thought it was like impossible. But through language, I will give you very simple. Through language and through my challenging with language, I'm sitting here. So this is why it's powerful and it's threat, because I'm sitting here and I can talk freely now.
What about you, Fatemeh? Do you share some of this? Or?
Well, I think literature is the highest and it's the best way to transfer content. We use language as a tool for transferring the content. So the literature is the highest and is the best way of this. And the literature, or can say art, remain for a long time. I mean, you can say a sentence directly about something and it has a very good effect, but for a short term. The people who are around you and hear this, listen to this sentence can remain it for a short time and give this effect. But literature stay for a long time. And because of this, and because of the public reception of literature in the world, and especially in dictatorial country, it's the poetry and the literature is very welcome. It's has very public reception, so it has a power. So it can be a kind of tools that dictatorial government, or can say government, can use it for their way, and the other, we as a artist or what's that? The people who are against their government can use as a tool to say something against government, to say something in freedom of speech, and use use the literature as a powerful tools. So, yeah.
And poetry, we're getting to that.
Yeah,
But
poetry.
first I would like to ask Abduweli, because I mean, you write in a forbidden language, language that can actually cost you your life. Why is it so important for you to fight for the Uyghur language? Why is it so important that your people can express themselves?
First of all, I think the world should be peaceful and should be like with the communication, and with when like Chinese government like already restricted the language, and it make people feel anger, and at the end they will take some violent. If you forbid them to speak, they will take on their way to resist, and the language is the way. If you allow them, you can communicate, and at the end you have a solution. But if you don't allow people to speak, entire like ethnic group to speak forbid their language and they restrict their language, and they will feel in heart that they will anger, and at the end, when they have a chance, they will break up and they will take action, and it's disaster for the world actually. So it's the way to communicate, and it's the way to reach the solution. And now Chinese government restricted Uyghur. It means that the solution already ended, and people already get angry, get hate inside their heart. And then, like, I don't want that, but it's really bad that like a Chinese government already grow that anger inside of the people, millions of people. It's really bad. And another, that language can connect people as a people, and they can like keep their culture alive, and they can keep, for example, that like Uyghur, we have more than 1,500 years of written literature, and like millions of books and millions of like handicrafts and like manuscripts, like different museum. It means that if you like restrict this language, and if you let the people forget this language, it means that like we lost treasure, like more than 1,000 years of treasure, and we lost all of them. And another, that language is the like the solution of a different way. Like in different language, we have different way of thinking, and we have different way of solve the problem. And if you restrict the language, it means that we lost the key to open the world and like open this box secret, and then like we will not have the solution at the end. So it's important, and it's because of like if this language alive, it means that the language can keep this culture alive, can keep this ethnic group alive. And if this language will forbidden, it means that the problem will become bigger and become strong and become like inherited for different generations. So it will disaster for the world. So language is important for that.
And you have also chosen poetry to express yourself.
Yeah, it is.
Why is poetry the right tool, as Fatemeh?
Yeah, like in Uyghur language, like poetry is really important. Because of this, you don't have like freedom of express yourself, and you need to have something. For example, that if you say that I don't like Chinese Communist Party because of its dictatorship, it's very direct, and you will be in prison. You need to say that I expect like flower, and I expect like spring and something like that, and in that case they will not know, and then you will be safe.
I suppose you can recognize. You're both nodding.
Yes,
you and Selma, yeah.
In metaphors, you use metaphors, symbols, and things
to avoid
Yeah,
the
being
regime.
persecuted.
And do the audience, the readers, do they understand the metaphors? Do they understand the double meaning? Do they understand what you're trying to tell them?
we can say everybody can. Unfortunately, the people who are sitting in the cultural minister, that they should read all the books and they should censor them. I mean, should they censor all the books? They also know our metaphors and the way of writing. But, you know, they understand, but they don't have any clue to censor this part sometimes. Sometimes they do, but so it's good. It's a good way to go through the censorship and dictatorial rules.
But just out of interest, when they censor, do they just censor the whole book or parts of the book or the words?
It happens all this form of censorship.
Okay.
For me, it happens all kind of censorship. I mean, one time, more than one time, they claim this book is unpublishable. So hold the book and hold the name. I mean, right now I'm banned in Iran, and even I write a cookbook, they don't publish it. So I'm in a blacklist. But sometimes they delete a whole of poem. Sometimes they take a line on just a verse or some verse, or sometimes a word like God or sex or naked, like this.
Do they have list like
Yeah,
ours?
it's a very long list. They give you
They have very long, like word book.
You have the same.
Yeah. I
A
mean,
dictionary of
have a
forbidden
dictionary.
words.
yeah, when
Yeah.
you got this list, you
Should
are
laugh.
happy because you get censorship. Not just they didn't say, oh no, it's unpublishable, you know.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very
And it's predictable. I
funny.
mean, you know what you can do and what
Yeah,
you can't do.
sometimes you know what happens, so you change something in a way, you try to change, or you try to censor yourself. That's so bad, but you do this to give permission to publish, because all the books read before publishing in Ministry of Culture, that we say censor ministry.
Is it the same in Iraq? You have the same experience there?
Before, yeah, of course, we had the wars, dictatorship on the world. So I remember she reminded me now about the censorship, and because of that, I assume they have actually list. I didn't see it by myself, but they have list, because my first short story, I was trying to publish it in a state newspaper, most famous state newspaper, and I was just 19 and 20. And then the editor sent me, they published another copy of my writing without back to me or something. The story had a character called Lenin. So Lenin wasn't allowed to use it, and I didn't know that. So I was just naive and writing and everything, and they just replaced it with L. The whole story, it was like L come, L went, L did, L. That was the, and. And I still remember, I still keep, this is the only story I kept it from that period, because it says something about how literature evolves itself by censorship and by fear. After that, I became scared, actually. I was too young. I don't know what will happen. And in that moment, the metaphor, that terrible metaphor started. Metaphor is a very beautiful thing to use in literature, and it should be a beautiful thing to use in literature, but not a way to hide all these feelings or all these expressions. This what destroyed our literature for a long, long period, actually. And this is very, very sad, because as I remember myself, I'm not the same writer 20 years ago or 30 years ago. Not the same writer at all. How much I missed in that time if I was free. What kind of literature would I write at that time? So, of course, language will scare them, because we always have our way to express. Even I don't like metaphor in this concept to avoid something. No, it shouldn't be like this. Literature is a beautiful art. It should be presented as it is.
But yeah, it should. It can't everywhere, obviously, and that's what you're talking about. But now, as your situation, as you're living in Norway now, and as you said, you can speak freely and you can write what you want, and you can write to the audience that you want, to the readers that you want. But do you use another kind of metaphors? I mean, have they changed? You don't need to self-censor anymore. Really?
Yes, we don't need to, but it's really hard to be free because you always feel that somebody is looking on you. Some big brother is there because you grow up already 40 years there, and how can you become like a free man in a few years? Because it's rooted in your heart. It's really hard. Another, like I want to mention that like the two ladies told that they have list to avoid those words. If we have that kind of list, it's lucky for us because we can avoid those words. The problem is we don't even have that kind of list we can avoid. We don't know which one is offensive, which one is not, which one we use, we will be in prison, which one is not. We don't know that exactly. That's the problem. Another that like they think it's like, for example, that you can avoid, for example, that Lenin she used, and then that word deleted. But we use God or like Uyghur, that word should be deleted, not Lenin. If you use Lenin, that proletariat, that communist leader, you'll be praised. It's just the opposite, like those things. And another that for me right now, like I express always something like, because we live in desert, and it's a desertificated area, and so like in our language we always feel something like hunger for water, hunger for rain, and like thirsty. This kind of feeling is very strong in Uyghur. Like we have different words to express your thirstiness, and about rain. But like after I came here, I don't need to express those feelings.
Especially in Bergen.
How many umbrellas have you? No. Let's not make fun of the locals. Yeah. Well, anyway. No. But okay. So you say that your writing hasn't changed that much. No. You still have this sort of big brother is watching you on your shoulder.
It's really hard. For example, that when I there, like especially outside, like every apartment there's a box, the reporting box, and you have to report someone if every week. If you don't report someone in 3 weeks, and you'll be in problem. You'll be in trouble.
1984.
So like, and another thing that like, you go to like public toilet, and you go to even like the mall or like everywhere, you have to show your ID card. You have to like swipe your face, like face scanning.
Yeah.
And then like everywhere you have under the camera. So it's really hard to be free because of you live there for a long time under the camera, under surveillance, and then here without any camera, without any surveillance, but that kind of feeling still with you, because it's really hard to avoid. And like, and another thing that I stayed in the like cell for a long time, and for 3 camera watching on me, and even I go to toilet, that camera is just like following me and taking pictures. And so it's really hard to avoid somebody is watching on you. Yeah, it's really hard.
And of course, you have this situation that, I mean, when you live out of China, when you live here, that you know that things you do here and say here can affect your families and friends. And
that already affected, like, my, it's really sad. My niece arrested, and she died in the camp. It's just exact camp I first arrested in Kashgar. Yeah, it's exact that place she died. And like, because of we disclosed the document we received from there, and after that I talked to the media, and I went to the United States and talked to the Congress about these things. And then that like my family members, like Mihrai, got arrested. And she died the exact place I arrested the first day, and that sexual arrest happened there. So I feel very bad. Like,
yeah. And of course your situation is very, very unique and very special. Nonetheless, I know that Fatemeh and Selma also has, I mean, you have had your troubles. There's a reason for you being in Norway and not in your home countries for all three of you. But I would like to ask you, Fatemeh, about poetry. Why did you choose poetry? Why is that your language? Lingo, litterata. But of course, you write novels, as you said, and you write other texts. So do also Selma, and you both had journalistic work, and you're multi-talented. But I wanted to focus on poetry. And the metaphors, have they changed since you came to Norway?
Yeah, one thing about metaphors that I said it's a tools for going through dictatorial process. Yes, of course. But the first thing, it's a kind of, as Roland Barthes says, you can have a reading text, which is so weird voice.
So well, actually, that was the feeling we got.
My cell phone was under control, and we know that the cell phone is they watching and control your cell phone. So when I call with my friend, I say, hey brothers, we call them. I mean, it's a sign of we know you are there and you're listening. By the way, I was thinking about reading text and writing text. When you use metaphors, it makes some layers on your works, and you can give the audiences semantic layers in your work. So it's a good way in literature, basically, not just in dictatorial atmosphere. And of course, I use it in my poetry, and I use this in Persian language, and it's a bit difficult sometimes when they want to translate it. For example, when in Persian language, when you use night, everybody knows it's a symbol of darkness, illness, ignorance, many bad things. But when they wanted to translate my poem in different language, I guess Spanish, they didn't have this culture, so they need some space before this night, the word night, to say it's a bad thing, because night was romantic, lovely place and things for them, And you have also in Norwegian some metaphors that's not familiar for us. If I remember, you can correct me. If somebody go with a blue coat to do something, it means you want to go to fight or to make clear something for somebody. But we don't have something like this in our literature. I wrote something in our lessons in school. So I wrote my poetry based on the present. So living in Norway, of course, affect my poetry and my writings. But at the same time, because I write about the human pain, conflict, modern conflict, so it was the same when I was in Iran. But maybe because of the language, the way, how I use language in my poetry, so it's a bit different from Norway and in Norway and in Iran.
Do you write to an audience, or don't you see an audience in front of you, a reader?
I try not to do that. I mean, being in the process of translation make you under a kind of pressure when they try to understand you and they try to translate your words to their language. You think by yourself, oh, maybe the next time I shouldn't use this word because it's very difficult for them. And they don't know about this indigenous capacity that you use in your work. But I try not to enter to this space. I try to be myself, to write what I want, to write about my feeling, even if it's not translatable. But yeah, it has some effect, the process of translation and being in another country and being in another language. But I think it's better it's a kind of censor, I guess. It's better to be a writer and write whatever you want. Don't think about the result and don't think about the audience, what they want of you, what they like. The like in Instagram and things, you know, it can affect you, but you should just push them
It's not
away.
necessarily a self-censorship. It might just be a wise editing. Just to not include everything. But Selma, how is it with you? Why did you choose poetry as your language and the metaphors? Has it changed since you came to Norway?
Yeah, I think I was influenced by a family who liked poetry, and my mother had this talent. Actually, she inherited it from her mother and grandmother. They used to have in their culture. They actually say lullabies from their writing, oral. It's not written, but it's oral. So I grew up hearing my mother just saying the poetry. She just came up with it at the same moment.
Sort of slam poetry.
Yeah, yes, something like that. But I think it is also maybe in Uyghur culture they have. It's like 4 verses. And it's like lullabies. They sing it at the same time. And I was always fascinated by her, how she came with all these. We were 8 kids, and each kid has his own lullabies according to their situation. If they are sick, if they are happy, so I can see her emotion and how she changed her tone. And my father, actually, he was Arabic language a teacher. One day, and still I remember, and I always say this story because she was the reason of this. There was a very famous Iraqi poet, female poet called Nazk al-Malaika. She was a professor at university, and my father was a student there. And one day, I remember I saw, when I started learning reading, I saw a book with this name, Nazk al-Malaika. And I asked my father, who's she? And he started talking about her in very, very fancy way. And he described her like another creature from another planet walking on the earth. I swear, his description for her made me to put in my mind, I want to be like her. And from that moment, and my first gift from school was pen. All the girls got dolls, other things like hair, except me, I get pen, and I wasn't offended by that. I like it. I just went home and I just finished the pen at the same day because I start just drawing the whole notebook. And from that moment, all the time reading, and because of the language, as we talked about the language, I didn't have so much friends outside. Books became my friends inside until I found one day I was writing a poetry, a poem.
Yeah.
And it was a very stupid poem.
How old were you?
I was like 8, 9.
You're not
something.
allowed to call yourself stupid
It was
when you're
stupid.
8 years old.
And I showed it to my father. And he said, "Okay, you will be fine. You will be fine." And from that moment, I didn't stop reading, and I didn't stop writing. That I just write, but I don't publish. Thank God. I didn't choose to be a poet. Actually, I think the moment chooses me to be a poet, and in that moment, because sometimes I have so much emotions inside me. Novel, it's not enough. Short story is not enough. Article is not enough. Sometimes I feel poetry the only genre that can understand me in that moment. So it just comes. You don't plan. So
You said that, you said that you have several mother tongues, or several. You grew up with several languages.
I do. My father and my parents, they are relatives, but they are whole from different worlds. My mother, she's like Azerbaijani Turkish descent, and my father, Armenian Turkish descent, and they are cousin. They were cousin, and because my father died a few years ago. And but they spoke very different language. Sometimes they couldn't understand each other because it's totally different region. Totally different region, like Adari, and for example, a Turkish language from Kazakhstan. They don't understand each other, but they belong to the same family. And it was very funny. When we were little, in the family, my mother relative, they were like a push high class, and my father, they were like owner of farmers. So they look at them. They are cousins, but they look at them like lower class. And when at the same room, we talked to my father in one language and turned and changed the language to talk to to our mother. And this confused me very much, because when we visit my mother's side, they start laughing. And when we visit our father's side, they start laughing, because they can't figure out what kind of language we are talking. And we thought we are talking both, but it wasn't. It was already totally made up different language. So we
So you don't write poetry in these
no,
languages?
no, but I like reading.
Obviously,
I like reading. Maybe my
That's why
thoughts. Maybe my
you ended
thoughts.
up in
It's
Arabic.
mixed.
Yeah.
But of course, Arabic, because I grew up in Iraq, and majority speaks Arabic.
Yeah.
And my study was English, which is very, very bad English. And I speak finally Norwegian.
Yes, you do. Fatemeh, I would like you to tell us a little more about the process of working in both languages, the translation. I think that's really, really interesting, of how because you're working with the organization Lesesøkerbok, yes, which is also the organization behind Selma's book, which means that you work very closely with the editor and the translator and advisor at Lesesøkerbok, and you
Yeah.
sit in a group for days.
Yes, actually, I want to say something first about my first book, which has one translator, and I sent poems to my translator, to Nina Zanjani.
Yes.
More than 30 poems, because the book has 30 poems, but I sent her more than 30 poems that she can choose between those which is better in language, in Norwegian and things. And finally it comes out. But the new process with the new book that I will publish in hopefully November, it's in a series with Selma and Ali Haidar, which is initiative by Lesesøkerbok, and will publish in Askeho. It's very different process. I and my translator and 2 editors sit around the table, and we talk about each poems, each lines of poems, and each words that I use in my Persian language. So they ask, what's that? Why you choose it? Why you didn't choose this word? And I had to explain all the feelings behind the poem, all the indigenous features inside the poems, and everything. And sometimes
Does it feel intimidating or intrusive? I mean, it's like
it's very difficult to
because-
explain your poems,
Yes.
because I always if somebody asks me about the poems, I prefer they have their perception. They got everything that they want from this poem. Maybe I write this and they got something else from this poem. It's very okay. I like this. But for the translation, you have to have a basic. They say, okay, it's the rules. We have to follow these lines. If we go through just some feelings and just some things that come from the heaven, we cannot translate it.
No.
And I don't choose the words and my poems like this, that it's not something from the God and from the heaven that comes. So I choose the words. So I could explain, but it was difficult in another language to express yourself, express your poetry, and sometimes my poetry has rhyme and rhythm, and first they started to just have a free translation, but after that they try to keep the form and a structure and even rhyme. I mean, the editors try to work with these poems and choose a structure very similar to the Persian. So the editors were very important in this project, and I hope the results give the same feeling that it's, but Selma published her book. My book isn't published yet. It hopefully will come in November. But the process was very fascinating for me to, it's work. It's a very, it's not just, I published my book in Catalan language that I don't have any idea about the language. So I just trust the translator and I don't know what happened, what's the result. Even in Czech, I don't have any idea about that. But now I trust them, of course, but I know what happened to my poems. If sometimes they ask me to change the Persian line, and I did because of the Norwegian language, and sometimes they try to be more, what's that? To follow me and Persian language and metaphors. So
I think we have to end this soon. I'm so sorry. This went way too quickly. But I would like to give the last word to Weli. And I would like you to tell us how you can keep on fighting for the Uyghur language. your mother tongue?
Yes, we have. I think we have a chance because we are not in China. Like we can use different way to keep our language alive. Like first of all, we have mother language school, not the official school. It's a Sunday school or Saturday school, something like that. Like we are having in Bergen in public library every Saturday morning. And this is the way. Another way, like writing book, like I keep writing for kids and for adults, both, because if in my language we don't have enough information, we don't have something to attract people, people don't use this language. And that's why I keep writing in for kids and for like adult at the same time, and writing actually a lot. All the time I keep my busy with the writing, because like if we don't have enough information, if we can't tell this language with something meaningful, something useful, people will not use this language and will forget this language naturally. So like I keep writing for kids and for like vuxen, for adult. And the third, like I'm publishing my books, like textbook for teaching Uyghur to kids. And I have already published 3 books, and like other 6 is coming. And another way, like we are using mashrab. We have a culture like gathering, like it include like poetry and the dance and the music and like humor telling. And so in that way, because of like after we taught the language to the kids, if they don't use it, they will forget. So we will have something funny, something entertainment, and like let them come and practice those language. And it's the culture we have in like our homeland, and we bring this here, and in that way kids can practice their language through poetry and through like something else. So it's very useful. So I'm really hopeful, and if we keep going, keep fighting, and we will keep our language alive. Yeah.
We are very hopeful, and of course I speak on behalf of myself, but I think I can include everyone here. We really, really stand behind you, and hope you will continue to enrich our language and enrich our society and make us more intelligent and wiser every day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.